Welcome to the Heart Rate Variability Podcast, where we explore the exciting science behind heart rate variability. The material discussed in this podcast should not be taken as medical advice. Please check with your medical provider to make sure any suggestions or strategies are right for you. Visit us at the OptimalHRV.com website to learn more about the Optimal HRV app, download a free copy of Matt's book, Heart Rate Variability, and also get show notes and additional resources around heart rate variability and its applications. Welcome, friends, to the Heart Rate Variability Podcast. Matt and Jeff are back together. Jeff, it's been a while.
It's been a long time, and we've got some new friends as well.
We do have some new friends, and a huge announcement is we got shirts. I've been trying to figure out how you put a value on a company, and I think having your own shirts at least increases your value by $1 million. So that's my as a mental health trained professional. I think this shows that we have hit a big stage for our journey. So
just wait for the pens, my friend. Once we get pens, you know we're gonna be real.
Well, we were supposed to have a booth at some point. I think we were supposed to be in Orlando. Maybe it was like this week or last week until that got moved, like everything else is. But I can't wait to get that first Optimal HRV pin. So
amen, brother.
Yeah, so I'm excited for this episode because we get introduced two new members of our team, and we want to, with this episode, give you a peek behind the HRV technology curtain. I think some of our listeners, hopefully quite a few, are on the Optimal HRV app. If you're not, there's a good opportunity coming up, as we'll talk about here, to get on that. But I haven't really heard a lot of folks in the HRV arena really talk about the technology. Obviously you have an app that gives you your HRV score, but I think to pull the curtain back a little bit and look at the development process with this will be really interesting to our listeners. And with that, exciting news to announce and bring to the podcast, Viv and Ben. Two team members that have been with us, it seems, for like the last decade or so that we've been working on this, but they've been hard working behind the scenes to bring this exciting announcement to reality. So, Jeff, I'm going to hand it off to you to lead most of the podcast today, but Ben, why don't you start out? Just give us a quick introduction to yourself.
Thanks, Matt. So I'm still waiting for so when you get real valuations, when everyone gets the t-shirt, you see, even us hiding in the basement. No, so Ben Riley. So I was thinking about this earlier. It's nearly been a year, nearly, I think, since officially kind of being part of the project.
That's right.
I want to say it's November, but Yeah, I mean, you should put a hard date in there so there can be a birthday party or something.
Get your annual raise.
Well, Matt's birthday is like November 22nd or something, so we'll just call it then for
I don't want to share it with him. I don't want my own special.
That's fair. You gotta have your own day. It's like being born on Christmas or a holiday like that.
So for the last year or so, I've been working, I guess, behind the scenes in terms of some of the technology. So if you are a user of the app, if you use the web dash, if you've got various HRV hardware and things, I guess I've been spending time trying to figure out the best way for you to get the most value out of what we do. So I've got a history in technology, history across small organizations. First time for me working as part of a kind of a health related, especially mental health related application. So I find it super interesting. I guess we'll get an opportunity throughout this to maybe talk about that and how all this, from my perspective, kind of happened and why it's been an unreal year and really enjoyed it. And I guess a background in technology, so a technologist at heart is probably who I am. Viv, what about you?
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Matt, for the introduction as well. But been in technology forever. And in between, I strayed away and moved to sales, the dark side. And then I get a call again, November time. Then am I
Probably
right
pretty
there?
close, yeah.
From Ben saying, "Hey, do you fancy engineering?" And I was like, no questions asked there. I just straight away jumped in. And through that few weeks in with the introduction to Optimal HRV and the amazing team, I realized that I'm not only building an application, but also helping people, real problems, because this is, again, my first time into the health application industry. So yeah, it's been an eye opener. My God, so many things to do, to work on. There's loads of magic that'll come through in the coming weeks, months. But yeah, so been in the industry from engineering, product, sales for about 12 years now. So that's me.
That's it. Well, gentlemen, for the audience, their benefit, Ben and Viv and I have been working together for going on almost a decade at various companies. So obviously very close relationship. And when Matt and I were figuring out how we wanted to continue the development and the growth of the product itself, it was very easy to know who to go to help us do that. And so it's been a year. I can't believe it, how quickly time can go, especially when you're in the middle of a strange global pandemic. But to you guys, thanks for all the work that you've done. I know that all of our users have seen some serious impact that you've made already. And today, the reason why we wanted to bring you on to the podcast, other than your beautiful faces, is to talk about
those great accents.
The great accents. I should have gone there first.
That's always right. About the accents.
Yeah.
Us Americans, I'll tell you what. But we've got some really cool changes coming to the app. Some very significant changes coming in November. So obviously wanted to get you introduced to our audience and help people just better learn about our team. But we want to talk about what those are, and more importantly, why they're important, why we did it, how it's going to help our users moving forward. And so really kind of want to let people know what to expect, so that when all of a sudden they see a new app on their phone, it's going to look drastically different. And there's going to be more wide access to it as well, widely available access to it as well. Folks are going to know what's changed. So that's going to be the focus of the podcast today. Hopefully that excites some of the folks that have been using it for a while, and we'll give you guys the opportunity to educate folks on all the hard work that you've been doing. So I guess before we get into that, Ben, Viv, I would love to know, over the last year, what was the most interesting part of what we were doing to you guys, and what made you want to join, and sort of what have you learned over the last year as you've worked on the app, what have you worked with our customers, because you guys are very involved with our customer success as well. Just kind of would love to get your feedback there before we jump into features and functionality and things.
Sure. I mean, what a wide question. I'll do my best. As Jeff, as you mentioned, we've all kind of worked together. So me, Jeff, and Viv have worked together at previous companies before. And I was just having a conversation, we were having a chat, and I was kind of, you spoke about Matt and Matt's love of HRV and his knowledge on the subject and his background. And we just started talking about it, and I just found it fascinating. So I would say personally, as enjoying technology and data specifically, when people start talking about human data, that's kind of exciting. That's interesting, because there's tons of stuff that you are just not aware of. If I would say that I'm definitely not in tune with myself about, and trying to understand, I guess, some of the things you can do with HRV as a way of almost measuring yourself and where you are, especially for its effects and impacts into trauma, mental health. I mean, you can just go wherever you want with that conversation. So that in general, I thought was super interesting. A little bit to Viv's background, working across a sales team, a sales org, software. I've never had an opportunity to work on software that I would say genuinely helps people. Like the world that I would typically work in would help other software or do things faster or do things at a better quality. And that's great. That's cool. It's very exciting, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not a human impact. You know, everybody I think here and probably listening has certainly had some conversation, some experience of mental health, be it positive or negative. And so when you get an opportunity to make it like a real impact, that's why I kind of thought, okay, that resonates. That's cool. That's different. And it's also a pretty unique way of being able to go and provide data on humans, because we're a weird bunch. Well, you know, just look at us, right? I mean, you two especially. Me and Viv are all right, but
So
you
you're
guys.
talking about us four, or we, or
Look,
that's what Ben said. Ben and I are fine, but
the rest of the world. So I found that just intriguing, and then listening to Matt talk about it was crazy. It was such an eye opener. Like, this is for me, it's like it's not a new science, but for me, it's a new science. And so being able to get something from your phone, you know, to actually tell you how you're doing, where you are, start tracking yourself is amazing. So I thought that's an opportunity I can't give up. And then, of course, talking with Matt about it, talking with Jeff about it, you guys kind of really made me think, cool, we could do something unbelievably cool here. And then pretty much, you know, within a week or so, I was talking to Viv and saying, trying to give what I would describe as a 10% effort. So I tried my best, but it was probably about 10% quality in terms of what it was about. So Viv, I don't know, that was kind of my experience. What about you?
No, it's the same. I have to be honest. When I joined and when I started the work, it was more to do with, hey, I can code again. I can develop, build, design something. And I really didn't care about what was happening, the bigger picture. That's because I've always been in a bubble and never really looked outside. But Matt shared some of the emails. Jeff shared some of the emails that were that this technology was impacting and how it was helping people. And that kind of changed everything. So now it's no longer, well, I would say 40%, and 60% is actually the motivation to help people. That is interesting and keeps me motivated as well. And basically, I love data. I really love data. I love stats. I self-host so many things with so many statistics, but it doesn't help me. It's just fun for me, right? And then suddenly when you realize that using that data, using human data, like Ben described, you can actually know stuff about yourself. And that feedback that you get, that suggestions that you get from the app, all these things were like extremely new to me. First time healthcare app, like I mentioned. I've used mindfulness apps, but it's all basically meditation, and it's not giving me any feedback. It's like, you know, helping me to meditate or something like that. Or if I walk, I get 10,000 steps. Okay. And that's it, right? Like that's where things stop. And when HRV and what we are trying to do with the application, there are so many possibilities, so many ways to help people understand human data. Is just brilliant. So that is what is interesting and helped me learn as well throughout this whole year. So yeah, coding is no big deal. It's just how you make that effective and valuable to people is the big deal.
No, it is. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's great. I love to hear your kind of perspective, because obviously you guys bring many, many very important skills to the table that Matt and I don't possess, more than just the fantastic accents. So thank you for a little bit of background on sort of your interest and where it came from. So we've got a lot of people that reach out to us that are trying to figure out HRV technology. How does it go together? How do we adopt technology to address social problems? You know, being technologists, being people who design the tech, how, I guess, how do you guys deal with that? What's the learning curve for HRV and technology? And, I guess, how would you respond to that?
So I would say like it's unbelievable the amount of data that we could analyze and review when it comes to HRV. There's not just one flavor, right? Like you can go and pick almost like a color chart for the amount of different types of HRV, and getting into some of the science behind it is fascinating to understand, why we pick the stuff that we pick and why we present it the way that we present it, or try and present it the way that we present it. That's been a huge learning curve. You go from it's like trying to learn another language in many respects. And so taking that knowledge of, well, if somebody was to just pick up our app tomorrow and have no clue about it, no understanding of what HRV is, we want to make the app, we want to make the web kind of side of things as straightforward and as educational without it being in your face as possible. And that's kind of like the goal. There's a bad analogy that I keep using, which is it's about a joke, right? Like if you have to explain your joke, it's rubbish. So the app is the same thing. If we have to go and explain it too much, then it's not so good. But how do you then provide context to where a user, somebody who just wants to go and do something very simple or get a very simple bit of feedback, how do you get them to do it when, in theory, somebody from halfway around the world in the middle of the night, whatever it is, can go and pick up those types of things. So that's always in my mind when we're trying to do design sessions, whilst also trying to distill, I think is probably the best term, some of the energy and ideas from some of the experts that we got, because in my view, we're trying to take a very technical data point or series of data points and present it to somebody in a manner that can either be very simplistic to very complex. And there's kind of a journey there. There's like a narrative journey there of how do you therefore go and design something so it kind of makes sense, but it's not kind of too complex. It's hard. And it's been good fun, but it's been some sleepless nights all at the same time. So, that process is tricky. And I would say we listen really hard to people like Matt, some other people in the team who just have these fantastic ideas. But it's almost like hard science, and then try and distill that into a process that literally anybody, can pick it up, use it, do it, understand it. And then hopefully if they want to take that themselves onto the next level journey. I always feel bad when something just tries to, ram it down your face, and you just kind of it's a bit like, kind of calm down. It's very much, if you want to keep going, we'll keep talking about it. We'll keep educating and so on and so forth. But we try and do it in as simple a way as possible.
Yeah, and I think that, it's been an interesting journey for me as well, because I get, and I'm not speaking bad about other applications out there, but there's this urge, I think from all of us at times, well, maybe we have an optimal score. Maybe we put a different label on something. And what I've appreciated working with the team, because I think we've all sort of adopted, how do we be a simple yet very, very connected to the science. And, if we're going to take a leap, which I don't think we've taken one leap, we may have labeled RMSSD as HRV at one point, that we need to be very, very cautious with that. I think part of that is just like, hey, if we want a mental health therapist to be alerted that somebody might be at risk for suicide or a relapse, you don't want to play around with that. So that's been, I think, fascinating working as, you and Viv really focus on, okay, how do we bring all this into the user experience? I think we've been able to hold on. Now we, for the biofeedback, max min in the current version, low frequency, high free, we're giving all this data, but I just love how we've stayed true to the science behind it. Even though it would be really sexy and fun to go off the science, I think that dedication hopefully will serve our users really well too.
The optimal score thing is really interesting because I think one of the first things that came through when we were talking about how do we, simplify but add different data points in and stuff. I think this notion of like the one score, like the one thing, it's really interesting. But then you got to do it with a manner of complete, transparency in terms of, because if I look at something, it tells me, hey, you got 8 out of 10. I'll be like, brilliant. But like, of what? Like,
yeah.
is that,
what does that mean?
like,
How'd you get there?
How what's the journey there? If somebody tells me quite technically that my RMSSD is 82, at least in my brain, at least I can go, okay, well, I can go and research that, or maybe something's going to tell me in the app, and I can go and dig into those details myself, and that is a hard thing to balance without being very overwhelming. And I think we've kind of experienced that over the last year.
Yeah. It's been a constant battle, I think, so Ben defends the rest of the team and I don't. I always throw my frustration. I follow a Reddit thread called Explain to Me Like I'm 5. So except it's acronyms. I can't think of it now. But I think that is what I want to bring into the application. It should be very simple, but then again, if we do that, then it'll be just like Matt mentioned earlier, we might digress off the science, which is not the right thing to do. Like we cannot play around with health data, right? So I'm slowly understanding that. So my frustration across the board to Ben has been a little less than usual, but I would still, I mean, it's a constant journey to make it as simple as possible with educating as much as possible. So it's going to happen. Ben, be prepared. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. But it's interesting, right? Like that as a notion, when we've thought of all the different ways that we go with this, I think based on the science, you can't really go wrong. But what you can do is you can scare people off, and use people to use this as a really good tool, a solid tool to help guide some of the decisions that they make. And it shouldn't make the decisions for you, shouldn't like push you down a path. But I'm a terrible gauge of like myself. So when I think about like if I'm right at the outer edges, like if I'm really tired or I'm really stressed or if I've overtrained or any of that sort of stuff, I'll tell you when I'm at like 95%. Anywhere before that, I'm rubbish. I couldn't tell you. And this is where things like this, for me, like I'm like, okay, this makes sense. I get it. That's good. Great. So.
Well, one of the key points that you talked about, Ben, I think, is how do you keep it simple? How do you make it easy? How do you make it usable for the clinician, for somebody who doesn't have a lot of time? It's one thing, Matt spends a lot of time first thing in the morning or at night clicking through the app and getting into all kinds of details about, his latest readings and HRV training sessions and all that kind of stuff. But Dave, when he's in his office with his patients, doesn't have time to read into all of that. He's got a couple minutes to get very quick data that he can use to communicate effectively with his patients in the short allotted time that they have. So you guys are, I know, continually working on bringing in enough data to make that communication effective while also making it accessible in a very quick and easy manner and an easy to use manner so that he doesn't have to spend a lot of time getting it. So you guys, you talked about magic, Viv. We techies completely agree what you guys do is magic.
Good with us.
Yeah. Let's just keep pouring the fairy dust on.
So, there you go. Exactly. You guys can introduce yourself as the chief magicians here at Optimal HRV. So with that, guys, I appreciate it. But let's talk a little bit about what's coming, because I think this is probably the most significant release that we've had. Even including the initial launch, which was really a minimally viable product designed for a specific number of clinical providers to meet their needs, and I think this is expanding that significantly.
Jeff, can you just, I don't think MVP is familiar to all our audiences, and I think that's a key part. Could you just explain what that is for us non-tech people out here?
Yeah. Minimally viable product means something that is not designed to be the end state, but it's designed to provide enough functionality for a user to get what they need from it. So the usability isn't there. Some of the interface isn't perfect. But if you need to see an HRV score, you can take a reading and see an HRV score. And if you need to see a trended 7-day, 30-day, 90-day average, it's there. But we knew when we did that it was designed for a number of folks in your world, Matt, that you were very close with and knew they were in need of. We've taken it up. We've built from that minimally viable product into something that we think is much more consumable for the masses from a clinical standpoint, as well as an individual standpoint. So, Ben, Viv, I would like you guys to frankly brag a little bit and talk about some of the great work that you and your team has done. And Matt, I want to get your feedback. You and Dave did a lot of, and one other yet to be named
our special surprise for the next podcast. Yeah,
exactly. Yet to be named, very well-known member of the team, have provided Ben and Viv a lot of direction, probably more than they'd like in some cases. So as they kind of go through these features, I'd love you to kind of chime in and tell the audience why. Because it's one thing to say, yeah, we added this to the product, but it's another thing to know why it's important. So I don't know where you want to take it, how you want to prioritize it, Ben and Viv, but it's your baby. So
we can only get ourselves in trouble for talking about too much of it. Just one, I would just give one additional concept for people who are not in this space at all. Like the idea of the MVP is that instead of, we don't want to come in and just deliver a car and then we realize that the wheels are on the roof and the engine's somewhere else. We want to give a skateboard, and then we look at the skateboard and you say, the skateboard's great, gets me from A to B, but I've got to go 40 miles. So actually, then we turn it into a motorbike, and then you turn it. Do you know what I mean? So it's about trying to scale up instead of we give you something and you tell us it's rubbish, and then we have to scrap it and start again. And with this process, I would say that's what we've sort of tried to do. So that I would say there's a couple of core things that we're doing. Let's start with the fact that, so at the moment, if you're just go and download the app from the App Store, we got to set you up. So it's not like you can just kind of go and get into this on your own. We've been, I guess, cautious of letting that happen.
And just to jump in there, Ben, just because I don't know that we've really discussed this too much explicitly, Matt, but the tool was really, Optimal HRV was really designed for the organization in mind. There's a lot of tools out there, HRV products, apps designed for the individual, and really the need that Matt saw in, and I'm putting words in your mouth, Matt, so apologies, but correct me if I'm wrong, but the need you saw in your world and in the clinical world was having a organizational dashboard with a lot of capabilities to be able to manage HRV across your patient/client base. And so we didn't necessarily want this to be an individual tool because our web dashboard really is sort of what set us apart and what we designed this product around. So that's why when you downloaded it before, you needed an organizational agreement with us to be able to access the product. So I'll transition back just to clarify for folks who maybe are listening to this as their first or second podcast.
No, it definitely makes sense. I think, but so essentially you're going to be able to just go download it, sign up, and start using, right? So but with that comes a series of problems for us, i.e. how do we make it so we don't need to, phone you up, get on a Zoom to show you how the app works. So I would say huge feature, huge ability, just to be able to go and use it, try it. Hopefully you'll love it. If you don't, we always appreciate the feedback. So we're kind of at scooter stage, right? We're not quite at the car, but we're not too far behind, using that analogy. And so a big proportion of what's coming in the app next is about usability. Like how do we get it so you don't have to explain the joke, right? Like that's the goal. As part of that, we've tried to simplify it. We've tried to take out, we've previously put a lot of stuff in that we thought were cool features, and I think they are, but we kind of think, well, almost too confusing. And so we want to try and streamline it and just make it very straightforward from a clinician to Doug from LA who wants to go and sign up, right, on his own and just do his own thing. So those are all the considerations we have. So a lot has been put into kind of streamlining so that when you get into the app, okay, here's where I go to onboard myself. What on earth does that mean? Like, how do I start making regular use of this application and not just use it once and that's the end of that? Like, there is definitely a journey when it comes to HRV, and what we want to do is get you excited about the journey and not put you off. Certainly, I would say if you've listened to Matt and Jeff speak on the podcast, you've watched some of the videos, I'd be surprised if you were put off, because the energy is unmatched. But we don't want the app or the technology to make you turn off either. So like just simple stuff like going in, taking a reading, understanding where to come in, listen to the latest podcasts, the data definitions that we provide. Why do we provide those? Give some additional context there. Previously, if you've used the app, I think you'll kind of notice that we've done things in the past where the feedback is not necessarily brilliant in terms of, okay, I got a whatever. What we're really trying to do, and I would say this is phase one of that, is trying to give you as much feedback as possible. So there's a mixture of those sorts of items in there. Hopefully you'll find those all kind of pretty exciting to use. There is a biofeedback module which has been upgraded. So that's gone from version, if you like version 1.0 to 3.0 maybe. I think we've made some pretty good advances in it. In some of its MVP state, I think there was a lot of bio and not so much feedback. And so again, I get a result. What does it mean? During my session, how can I see whereabouts I am, where I'm trending, those sorts of things. So we've started to embed heart rate. We've started to try and give you more opportunities to learn about yourself and your trends, but trying not to kind of, I think I used the phrase, put it down your face earlier. I think it was meant to be ram it down your throat, but so in there, we put in some assistance to get you better at things like resonance, frequency breathing, get you to kind of the correct rates. We put in playground, so you can just go in and give it a try, and hopefully, I think, start to educate you into the world of biofeedback. Certainly, some of the paced animations, like bear in mind, I've done this for hours and hours and hours, and we would say the same as we've tried to pull this together. It's not easy. So somebody tells you to breathe at a certain cadence, at a certain rate, it's hard. It's difficult to do. So taking that
over a 20-minute period of time.
Yeah, very much so. A distractionless space. I've got 2 kids that are very noisy, so you have to manage really manage yourself and dedicate your kind of time to yourself. And we're aware of that in the app. So we're trying to give you as many reasons and educational snippets before you start and once you're finished, just to make sure that you've taken this seriously. And I think, I don't know what it's like in the US. I can only comment for myself and my friends and the world that I would say I kind of generally kind of live in. We are not great at it. I'm definitely not great at it, but this has been an eye-opener for me to kind of see the benefits that you can kind of have by kind of following biofeedback. So feedback, I would say it's version 3.0 now. We've got some ideas that are going to take it up another level as it kind of provide you more details about yourself, more trends, more analysis. But at the base core, if you just want to learn how to improve your HRV and improve how to help yourself in a stressful situation, I think the work that we've put in to try to make it as simple as possible, but we think that it's going to be, we hope that you like it. We certainly do.
No, that's great feedback, Ben. So just to jump in, so Matt, let's unpack that a little bit. So there were a couple major things there. I mean, obviously a lot of cool stuff in between, but there's the individual subscription capability that will be launching soon, and a huge upgrade in terms of the biofeedback module. Lots of things going on there. So let's talk a little bit about that. Obviously I can answer. I've got my ideas. Why do we go the individual route after a year plus of not? Yeah. And then, number 2, I know this is a passion project for you and an unnamed, yet to be named person in the company who's very, very well known in the biofeedback space. You guys had a lot of great ideas. So maybe talk through a little bit about where that came from.
Yeah, well, part of the gap that, Jeff, you and I initially really set out to fill is that the existing technology, at least for an affordable, practical, everyday use, did not allow a therapist, a medical provider, even like a manager to track HRV in a way that also protected confidentiality and was HIPAA compliant. So we really saw this gap is in many ways the people that, that I've worked with throughout my career have experienced trauma, stress, burnout, depending on what group I'm kind of working with at the time, really didn't have access to this. So we really wanted to rush into this void and bring this technology as a way to measure and track your heart rate variability so that it could be used as a quality manager quality measure, to give you data on how effective your interventions, your wellness program is working. So when we talk about the MVP, I think we did a really good job at that. I know I was supposed to hate the MVP at one point, but hey, we did it. We gave you RMSSD. It was right there. We gave you an accurate reading. And so as we sort of started to build this great team, one of my goals was always we're measuring it. Could we also help you improve it? Now, there's different quotes out there in the quality literature. If you pay attention to some data, that data usually improves. So we were sort of doing that, but with all this research out there about heart rate variability, biofeedback, is here we are sort of set up to collect this data. So we took on the challenge, and this is sort of why we've been a little quieter as far as not pushing out things every week. We took a pause because, Ben and Viv have been working so hard to get this technology into the app. Is we can actually help you improve the functioning of your autonomic nervous system. We can help you strengthen your prefrontal cortex. We can help you manage the amygdala or the sympathetic nervous system's anxiety. And so now, and also people wanted to use this as individuals, which was great feedback for us to get as well, is that a user who might be struggling just with burnout, maybe it's not rose to the mental health issue, we can not only help you track how maybe focusing on your sleep, diet, exercise, maybe you are engaged in therapy, that's so we can track how that's helping you recover. We also have the capability through HRV biofeedback to help you improve that right in the app as well. Again, really being true to the science over time. So to me, and I think this kind of happened and we just kind of snuck it out there, at least the initial version of the HRV biofeedback. Now we can actually be a supplement to therapy. We can be a supplement to medical treatment. We can be, a supplement to if somebody comes into a housing program or is trying to recover from burnout that I think we've all been under since COVID. Hey, we also now have a tool that's, again, proven by a whole bunch of research to help you along in that process as well.
Oh, that's great. And I think you said it best. I mean, the cool part through all this is people, as it relates to the individual side, is people were asking for it. That was the coolest part. I mean, knowing this was more designed for organizations, we had a lot of folks saying, how can I jump on board? How do I get access? How do I subscribe? And so thanks to the folks that are listening. Thanks to the folks that have read Matt's book. Thanks to the folks that are paying attention and are just great supporters of ours, because that's how this works. It's a community people who are really learning about HRV and ways to apply it in their day to day. So Ben, any more you want to talk about on the web app? Because I know there's been a lot of updates on mobile app, because I know there's been a lot of updates on the web app that I would love to hear from Viv, because I know he and his team have been very front and center on that one as well. But anything we missed?
There's probably loads of stuff. I think if you're familiar with the app, you've used it before, you'll see some changes. We're trying to make this process of onboarding certainly easier and just knowing where to start. So that's going to evolve even more. I think we're doing some exciting work at the moment for the next release after this one. So I won't spoil that. Maybe, me and Viv get to come back again. We'll get maybe even with an optimal shirt on, who knows?
At least a pen.
Exactly. Well, there's the pen, then I'm all over it. And there's just some minor, it's not even minor, but when you've been through something for, I don't know how many hours we've put into it. for so long that you kind of forget a lot of the stuff. But a lot of the routing around from the dashboard and how we present in your data and trying to consolidate it so it's simple but effective. You'll see all of this sort of stuff. So loads more coming. This is, I guess, a first iteration, but we hope everybody likes it. I guess that's what we got.
And to your point, if not, send us feedback. Support at Optimal HRV. You always want to hear from our users what's working and more importantly what's not. So
definitely.
So Viv, for the organizations, clinicians, folks that are on that web dash every day that Dave lives by, maybe a quick summary of what can be expected for those folks and what they're going to see here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So initially or previously, when you logged into the web dash and got access, the way the data was presented was, I think, way too simple. There is something called as way too simple, and which meant that there's a lot of clicks to be done before you actually understand what's happening to your patients, to your group, and things like that. So now we have at least presented the data in a way that you can get a quick overview of what is happening, to whom, and then click and go into additional details if necessary. Otherwise, you can just skip through. So that whole process of having to click through to even understand is gone to, I see this point, I see this patient, I can click on him or her and then get all the additional data there is. So that's the update which has already gone into production now, so it can be used. What is coming up next very soon is a lot of charts. Who doesn't love charts? So a lot of charts, a lot of graphs, understanding the various metrics that you already see on your mobile app being represented on the web dash. So it gives you, I love the web dash because it's a bigger screen, a lot more information on a single page, and it's lovely to see all those graphs in big, wide environment. And I'm sure our users, our clinicians will experience the same with the new web dash. It's coming soon. It's very close to being in production. So
that's fantastic. And when he says in production, he means available for all of our users.
Sorry. Yeah. So in the world of engineering, for all the folks out there, there are different stages. So we test everything. We build stuff. We make sure that none of you experience bugs, but apologies, some of them do slip through. And production, like Jeff mentioned, is basically everybody can log in and get the same experience that we were talking about.
That's it. That's exciting stuff, guys. We really excited to get the feedback, really excited to see what our users think. Really excited to continue the journey and continue to build this thing. And I think one of the things that we haven't talked about is how user-led this development actually is. So obviously Matt and Dave and our soon-to-be named participant here have provided a lot of feedback with some of our users. So if you're out there, if you've got ideas, if there's things that you would like to see or usability issues that you're encountering, please let us know. We take that very much to heart in terms of how Ben and Viv organize the work that they do and their teams do. So
we go through a pretty robust design process about any new feature idea, and often it is, of course, driven by customers and people using it, because they're as my old boss would describe, you out at the pointy end doing it. And so you've got the most experience. Like I said earlier, we spend a lot of time looking at screens and trying to figure out what the best way to do it is. But you can train for a race, but it doesn't mean it's going to go the way you expect it on the treadmill, right? So we love feedback, positive and negative. Like if something is annoying and it does kind of bug you every day, don't let it bug you every day. Just drop us a note. Will I promise to fix it or change it? No, because everybody's got opinions, I'm afraid. It's definitely in the world of opinions, but we'll certainly review it. And if it makes sense, you bet that we'll do our best to get it in there.
That's it. Well, thanks, guys. Any parting shots from anybody before we wrap up this podcast? Other than I'm glad to be back. It's been a while since I've been on the show. So thanks to our listeners for everything as always.
Yeah, we're coming back strong here pretty soon. We as we introduce our final kind of, or at least at this version, our other expert here to nerd out about everything HRV biofeedback. Hopefully weekly soon. So we've been holding off a little bit. I've been calling this kind of our strategic pause, even though I know we've gotten a lot of new stuff out there, but check us out. And while Ben will not incorporate all your feedback, the fact if you get it to us now, you probably have a better likely, because we expect our user base to jump dramatically. So you're still in kind of that sweet spot with us. If you want to jump on, check out the new version. You kind of get this spot with us where it'll probably get through the noise a little bit more than it will a year or two from now. So we'd love to hear from those early adapters out there.
That's it. You got it. Well, thanks everybody. Ben, Viv, any last comments before we sign off?
Yeah, absolutely. Once you get hold of the app, take your readings every day.
At the same time.
At the same time.
Who prepped him? Who was prepping him for that? That's
That's been slacking him on the back end. Somebody say this.
Yes. Set that notification function right in the...
Yeah. It's a shameless plug for the notification function.
Yeah.
Right now, you can set reminders. I should remind myself as well. I missed today.
Screws up the data, Viv. Screws up the data.
I know. I have to get back into it again.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Matt, I heard a rumor. Are you writing another book? Is that?
Yeah. There. Let's hope people in suspense. Not put a deadline on it quite yet. So yes, and I can say our team is writing a book. So it's not just me this time around. So more information to come with that as well.
We just like to tease a lot, don't we? Well, thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate the continued work that you guys are doing, and to our listeners for the continued support. We're here for you guys, so let us know how we can help you.
Awesome. Check us out at optimalhrv.com.
Thanks, everybody.